Let us start with a roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, roll call. Councilmember Lee,
Here.
Councilmember Moore, Mayor Pro Tem McCary,
Here.
Mayor Horn, and Councilmember Connors is absent.
And for the Pledge of Allegiance today, in recognition of Juneteenth, I would like our Mayor Pro Tem Annie McCary to please lead us.
If you would all rise, please, face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start with our presentation and ceremonial matters. We'll start with the Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Madam Clerk, would you please read the proclamation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City of Laguna Woods Elder Abuse Awareness Month, June for 2025. Proclamation. Whereas the Laguna Woods is a community comprised mainly of older adults, and whereas Elder Abuse Awareness Month is an international opportunity to bring attention to all too prevalent maltreatment of older adults at home. And whereas elder abuse is a problem that crosses all socioeconomic boundaries and affects older adults regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, education, or location. And whereas elder abuse manifests itself in a variety of forms, including physical, emotional, and financial abuse in homes and long-term care facilities. And whereas elder abuse can cause lasting harm, financial ruin, and death. And whereas there are physical, behavioral, and isolation warning signs that can be identified and acted upon to prevent or end instances of elder abuse. And whereas ending instances of elder abuse often requires reporting by loved ones or other concerned parties, as well as professional intervention. Now therefore it be it resolved that the Laguna Woods City Council does hereby proclaim June 2025 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month in the City of Laguna Woods and encourages residents and businesses to learn the warning signs of elder abuse and report all instances of known or suspected elder abuse, dated this 18th day of June 2025.
Thank you. Is anyone here to accept that today?
No.
Does anyone in the audience have anything that they want to say about elder abuse? If not, we'll go to the council. Anyone would like to say anything about elder abuse?
I would turn my mic on first. Having worked in the healthcare for many, many years and having seen the evidence of elder abuse and being aware of how silent this issue can be, I think it's really, we all have to be constantly aware of the abuse of our elderly population and bring awareness to it and bring it to the public light, because oftentimes the perpetrators go unrecognized or just get away with it. So I think we as a community and as a city council, we really are honored to support this proclamation. I am, and to bring awareness to the entire community. This is a silent activity that goes on that many of us may never be aware of. So good on the city for recognizing it, and I approve this proclamation.
Elder abuse can be so isolating, whether you're going through the emotional turmoil, the physical turmoil, anything that's happening. If you're being abused, it's a very isolating thing. You don't really feel like you can reach out and talk to anybody about it. So it's something that we all should look out for in others. Like if you go out to lunch with someone, if they're not dressing the way they used to dress, if they have black and blue marks that are unexplained, if they are uncomfortable and not doing the activities that they used to do, and you're not comfortable reaching out, you can always reach out to Adult Protective Services, and they can do wellness checks. They can go out anonymously to somebody's house and just check and make sure they're okay, because so many times people don't want to abuse it because the majority of times it's by someone in the family, a caregiver, a grandson, or a granddaughter, someone that feels the inheritance should be theirs now and grandma won't notice it missing, and funds can be transferred. There's all kinds of things that can happen to you. And it takes all of us to look out, because people don't want to sign to have their children or their spouse taken away in chains, but they need something to do. So Adult Protective Services is always a great resource. And just we have to look out for each other in an active way, not just wait till somebody says something. So, okay.
I have wanted to speak first.
I just want to briefly say that I feel that one of the serious problem in this area is that these incidents are underreported, because many times victims are very reluctant to come forward, and maybe because they feel embarrassed or they feel helpless or they don't even aware of where to go. And another area that we're going to hear a lot more about is, with the cost of living increase, we're going to see a lot of financial abuse that are done by others to elderly. Elderlies are a prime target for the fraud and scam and all that. And I have recently heard about the very serious case in the village. And there's no way that you can backtrack and recover the loss. Once it's done, that's the end of it, and that can be very critical to our elderlies, I feel.
So would someone like to move this proclamation?
I did have a comment.
Oh.
Thank you. I too agree, and I think another area, all those areas, and then there's the area of the internet, where today I received one on the toll, that I owed a toll when I hadn't even been on the toll road, so I knew it wasn't true. But you can think, wait, was I on the toll road? Did I miss something? So they can catch you in these scams. So constant training with the internet kind of issues that are coming up is helpful too. So there are lots of areas where people get scammed, and the elderly, and it's easy.
House five.
me. Have
My way down the canyon, saw a pretty good sized column, knew that this was going to be most likely an extended or major incident based off the fire behavior. Chief Covey had directed me to check the back of cabin land down off of Tribuco Creek Road. I observed the fire conditions starting to take off. It's narrow box canyon right there. And he stated that Cleveland Patrol 24 was to the back of cabin land, just assessing fire threat as well as if there was any cabins that were occupied.
And then we had a report of hikers that were in the area being threatened by the fire and needing to be evacuated.
Got a hold of Cleveland Patrol 24. They advised me that they weren't able to make any contact with any persons, but they did find 2 vehicles at the trailhead. So I was able to relay that critical radio traffic to airport operations and advise that it'd be a good idea to start doing an aerial recon.
Thankfully, Chief Summers was paying attention to the radio and listening and made a heads-up move to announce that he's in the area heading that way, and he will work on effecting the rescue.
I continued down Tribuco Creek Road, informed airport operations that I'm going to attempt to extract. I found Cleveland Patrol 24 facing westbound, facing me, stalled out, made contact with the captain, assured that he had no injuries. He stated that his vehicle was unable to start, and he was right at the very narrow of a box canyon that had a rock slide right there. I remember that distinctively, and I started getting some smaller rocks hitting my vehicle, which also made me a little bit more nervous of where I was at, and also being in that box canyon, started observing fire on both sides of the canyon, starting to become more erratic. So I hailed to the captain, get in my vehicle.
The air filter had sparks put into it and caught on fire, stalling out the vehicle, and it became an incident within an incident. There was a rescue, life-saving emergency.
Looking back now, I think I made the best decision by going in, helping the individual get him back to safety, and then making a difference that day.
He announced on the radio that he had the captain off the patrol, the Forest Service patrol, and was on his way out. And we all obviously took a big collective sigh there. That was one of the rescues handled and done.
Orange County Sheriff's Department were in unified command with us at that point in time. They quickly organized their air assets to go back to the back of cabin land and successfully extracted a mother and father and a child, as well as one individual that was occupying one of the cabins.
If it wasn't for Mike and going in there and taking those risks to himself, I mean, he put himself at really grave risk to go in there and rescue him. There's no question in my mind this firefighter would have been either hurt or killed.
At the end of the day, I was just doing what any other firefighter would do.
It's really a brave moment for Mike. We've all sworn to do this for the public and each other, but when it really happens, are you gonna do it? And Mike didn't hesitate.
Would you like to say anything?
Sure.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you, Mayor Horn, council, city staff for the recognition. Pretty much the video summed it up. I was in a staff meeting that day, just like I am in a council meeting, and thinking that that's all I was going to be doing is computer work and emails and checking on my crews. But I quickly got called out to that incident and soon found myself in a position that I found myself previously in my career, but I was glad that I was able to make a measured rescue of that fire captain off Cleveland Patrol 24, and then also be able to relay the communication to our command post and the sheriff's department to be able to safely extract those hikers and the one person occupying the cabin. So I appreciate the recognition. At the end of the day, I was doing as I was trained and just doing my job, and I'm glad I made a difference that day.
I'll start at this side. Councilmember Moore.
Yes, I think we're so proud of you. This is our second time to be able to honor you, and it's certainly a pleasure.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and thank you so very much for what you do in your job.
Well, we're so proud of you, but make sure that you take care of your safety as well. Thank you.
The whole fire authority had a dinner for the best and bravest, and where they honor all their firefighters for the year. And Chief Summers got the biggest award for valor, and it makes us all here feel so much safer that our own chief is the one that got that and will always go above and beyond for any of us, because makes me feel a lot safer. So thank you for all you do, and we're gonna take pictures, so don't go sit down yet. Okay, as soon as we move this.
I so move.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we're gonna adjourn for 2 minutes and take a picture, okay?
We're going to take one with the pride as well, right?
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah.
for the pride
a
proclamation.
series of pictures.
Yeah, well, definitely. Second session, and next up is the Laguna Canyon Foundation presentation, agendized by Mayor Pro Tem McCary. So would you please come up, Mr. Thomas?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor Horn, members of the council. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Scott Thomas. I'm the executive director for Laguna Canyon Foundation. We're a whoops, there it is. Okay, we're a nonprofit based in what we call the South Coast Wilderness, which is, I'll go into that a little bit further here, but thank you so much for having me here today. and those in the audience as well. Thank you. And sorry my back is to you, by the way, but I've got a little PowerPoint presentation to kind of walk you through what we're all about as a nonprofit. And the reason Mayor Pro Tem McCary brought me here today is we're active in the Coastal Greenbelt Authority meetings, giving updates in that forum as well as Mayor Horn. You've been in those in the years past. So anyway, I'll move through this. So yeah, I got to turn it on. The clicker. All right, there we go. So the first little bit of history, always starting off with history. The genesis of our organization started with a walk to save the canyon. Some of you that have been around for 35 years, in 1989, there was thousands of people walked up Laguna Canyon Road in protest of a development in Laguna Canyon, just outside of what now is Laguna Woods, known as the Laguna Laurel Project, where it's 3,500 homes, golf course, strip mall, and other developments were to occur in that canyon. And so people did not want to see that. So they marched to save the canyon. The lower left is where you see everybody came together, and they had a big protest rally. Mayor at the time, Lita Lenny, was there on stage, welcoming everyone, glad that everybody showed up. And so from that, Laguna Canyon Foundation was formed to work with the Irvine Company, basically to secure the land for the public open space and eventually public parkland. So that's the roots of our organization. And once it was sort of saved, our mission shifted a little bit, and I'll get into that. But really, that's the genesis of which started as a 2,000 acre purchase, now has grown into 22,000 acres that we are invested here to essentially preserve and protect. So next slide is, if I can get that to work. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So a little bit about you see the walk on the lower left, that's a picture of that. That's the development you see, which is interesting in the middle there. So you see the planned development. If you've been up Laguna Canyon Road, you've seen the Laguna Lakes. There were the homes planned, the 3,200 homes there. So that's kind of, so our roots are in advocacy, land protection. Now that's saved, we've morphed our mission into one of preserving and protecting. So we're a conservation organization, again, a 501c3, there for the conservation, ongoing protection of the South Coast Wilderness Area, this 22,000 acre thriving ecosystem that gives inspiration and connection to the wilderness and refuge for all of us. I always like to use this image because it really speaks to the significance of this coastal open space that's just in our backyard here. And the yellow circle is the South Coast Wilderness, 22,000 acres of open space. These are coastal open spaces. It's the largest in between here, Camp Pendleton, to the south at about 120 acres, and in between Santa Monica Mountains, which is 150 plus acres. So that's pretty significant in terms of a coastal open space that just, again, right in our backyards here.
Is that map to scale?
Yes, it is. It's a Google Earth image.
Thank you.
so-
I'm fascinated by it, actually.
Yeah, whenever I zoom out of Google Earth, I'm always amazed at seeing how much we're privileged.
Oh.
Yeah, that's Google Earth. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, I did not morph it or skew it or anything. That's exact. I grew up in the Palos Verdes Peninsula, similar coastal open space, but it's only 1,700 acres to put in perspective if you've been out there. So that's kind of, so when we look at the South Coast Wilderness, what is that? What is this term I'm using? It's the collection of all of these various parks, from Crystal Cove State Park to the left here surrounding Newport Beach, to Irvine Open Space to the north above the toll road, to Laguna Coast Wilderness Park, which surrounds this city, as well as Aliso and Wood Canyons Wilderness Park, which surrounds the cities of Laguna Niguel, Aliso Viejo, and Laguna Beach. So, and then in addition to that, the open space around the city of Laguna Beach is also part of that 22,000 acres. So that's the term South Coast Wilderness. What Laguna Canyon Foundation does now that we've sort of saved the land, we've morphed into education. So educating people about the importance of these lands, why we can never take them for granted. We always need to be vigilant in saving them. And also for volunteer and outreach programs. So we have thousands of volunteers. We have a volunteer coordinator that runs all the volunteer programs and the outreach programs. We do a lot of talks to senior centers, to various groups around the South Coast Wilderness. And also we do a lot of conservation work. We're boots on the ground, taking out invasive plants, invasive species, and bringing in native habitat. So that's a big part of what we do. And to get people out on the land, we do a lot of trail stewardship. That means trail work that's out there to get the trails. After every rains, we have trail erosion. So we're out there fixing the trails after the rains. Our environmental education is really important. We bring a lot of school kids out to the parks. We, through grants and donations, have basically a lot of retired teachers that run our school programs that take out elementary school students. A lot of these students are Title I students from inner city areas that have never seen the wilderness before. It's their first exposure to wilderness. So educating them, it's a safe environment as long as you know, stay on trail and you know what's out there, but really get them to love it. So that's really what we try to do with our elementary school program. And then conducting, as I mentioned, these awareness talks, these education talks to the general public as to what the importance of these lands are and why we need to protect them. So that's, here's just some field trips. This is at our largest natural lake in Orange County, what we call Barbara's Lake, right outside your city border here. School groups, we love to take them out there to see the waterfowl. We have southwestern pond turtles out there, they love it. And then on they love to go to the caves in the middle, lower right there. So big part of what we do. Volunteers, we, as I mentioned, hosting our volunteers through our volunteer education programs. And we also train and support the volunteers. So they take CPR, they go through orientation, they are then graduate and become a long-term volunteer if they go through that program. We also have short-term volunteers that can just sign up for the day, and we have those long-term volunteers out there that help them as well as our staff to help them on programs. So it's trail work, it's habitat restoration work, it's getting out. We have a native plant nursery, it's working there. We also have Nix Nature Center, named after James and Rosemary Nix, former Laguna Woods residents, and there's an opportunity there at the public counter to meet and greet people and give them trail maps and so forth. So here's just some pictures of our volunteers in action. Kate, lower right there, upper right, sorry, is one of our Nix Nature Center volunteers. Restoration and conservation. A lot of what we do is just getting rid of these invasive plants I mentioned before, and so that's kind of a big part of what we do, bring back habitat. This is just an example of one of our projects in Laguna Canyon, where to the left we removed the flashy fuels, non-native grasses and other mustards and so forth, and we've planted with coastal state scrub and very, very valuable habitat for a lot of threatened and rare species on the right there. So that was just last year. And this is what we see when we restore back these habitats. We see wildlife coming back. So we do a lot of camera monitoring where most of the animals come at night. So we take pictures of them at night. They don't see there are cameras there, but we get a picture of them. And so we've been seeing great wildlife, bobcats, lower left there, and the common critters, skunks, mule deer, and raccoons, and occasional badgers, actually. I didn't get a picture of those, but trail stewardship is really important because I mentioned, it's like on the lower left here, you see the pictures of it before to the left and after to the right, our trail work is really trying to keep erosion happening, but also keeping the trails narrow so they don't go further out into the habitat to protect the species. Every trail work during nesting season, we have birds. We go out and really look to make sure there's no birds nesting in the area before we do our work. Then we have the volunteers come out just about every weekend. You see them on the upper right there during doing trail work. So that's a really important part of what we do, is keeping water off the trail, so having water diversions in our trail. So what's ahead? More education outreach. We're going to also upgrade, we're looking at with OC Parks and upgrading the interpretive exhibits at Nick's Nature Center. We're expanding the school programs into Laguna Beach, into the Laguna Beach school system as well. Doing a lot more trail work days, again, on the weekends mostly, except when it's really hot. We don't do trail work on the hot days. And then a really important project I want to point out, because it's right in your backyard here, is what we're calling Parcel 5 Restoration Site. And this is if just north of Laguna Lakes, all these colorful polygons represent enhancement, so to the native. So we're taking out invasive species, putting back key coastal state scrub and native grasses into these areas to promote wildlife diversity and biodiversity. So that's 65 acres. And there's also a 10-acre site to reintroduce the Pacific pocket mouse in that brown in the lower left there. The critters, again, if you build it, they will come. If you provide the habitat, the critters will come, and that's a big part of what we do in our mission. You saw it, conservation, but getting people to appreciate the California quail, our state bird, with many calls, and of course our rabbits and other critters as well. Lastly, just wanted to point out, all of the things I talked about are on a website, which is lagunacanyon.org. You can see up there on the upper top there, you can look at all of our events. You can sign up for our events. These are, every week we have an event, a trail walk, a volunteer trail work day, or whatever. It's all in under events. You can click to donate if you'd like for a tax-deductible donation. You can just learn more about what we do on this website. We try to keep stories going and keep the community engaged. So thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. Sorry that went a little long, but I thought it was a great opportunity to introduce myself and our organization to you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Councilmember McCary, Mayor Pro Tem McCary.
Thank you. I have enough questions for another presentation, but I will ask, you mentioned invasive plants, and so my question, I'm going to try and put it all into one. The importance of removing invasive plants, what makes an area susceptible to invasive species, and where do they come from?
Yeah, good question. Typically invasive species are brought over from cattle grazing. You know, we're still dealing with a lot of this was ranch land and grazed land with cattle and sheep. And so a lot of those were introduced during those times. Mustards, the non-native European grasses, the other, so that seed bank will continue unless you get after it for several years and restore it back to habitat. So that's one. The other is people get weed seeds on their clothing and can take them to different places. Animals can take them from one place to the other as well. Birds are really good at that. If you've ever seen your backyard where's that Brazilian pepper come from? Well, that's probably from a bird. So they're a vector of invasive plants. What's important about removing invasive plants is, well, especially when we're talking about fire risk these days, is where fire starts is through the kindling of invasive species, because they are flashy fuels, as fire will tell you. And those are much more susceptible to initiating a fire. The sparks from a car or sparks from a cigarette, but they're not going to start on a healthy native, plant. They're going to start on that kindling and the non-native and flashy fuels that are the invasive species. So that's another good reason to remove them, other than just they have very little habitat value in terms of conservation values.
Wow, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lee? Nothing?
I wondered, do you have any idea of the wildlife count? Do you make any effort, or it's not necessary, or how does that handled?
Yeah, there's different counts that we do. We do bird counts every year, working with the Audubon Society, getting their counts as well. We have staff members that do individual counts on particular projects as part of the monitoring success criteria of the habitat restoration work we do. I showed those pictures of that, those camera shots were from a project at Big Bend and Laguna Canyon Road that we're monitoring the wildlife. That's a wildlife corridor linking Laguna Coast Wilderness Park to Aliso Wood Canyons. So we monitor the species there, which kind of what is moving along that corridor as well. So those are the sort of counts we do, yes, yeah.
You know, it's interesting that I think humans have a need to connect with nature. It's important for our health. And I walk in the morning, and I walk up, part of my walk is up Bahia Blanca, and I look over at the shrubs. Right now, everything's green, and the fog, it's amazing how just that fog, that moisture is enough for those plants. And every morning I look, I just love it.
Yeah.
It restores everything in you. So I thank you for saving. I very much support your programs, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Well, we believe that you protect what you love, right?
That's
so
true.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you love it as well.
Necessary for humans, I do believe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like 11 or 12 years ago, before I even got on council, I used to come to meetings and listen to council member Connors talk about the cactus wren and how it wouldn't go any further than the next cactus. And when there was a fire, you had to go and you had to replant the cactuses so that they would continue going, and how interesting that was. And so even then went on to the pocket mouse and the spade-toed frogs and Bubbles, the hippopotamus. I mean, there's tons of stories from there. And I don't know if everybody knows, but they now have a place like a little museum, a headquarters, where kids can go and see all the different animals and species, some stopped, some not, that they can go and see there. And right at the base of Laguna Canyon and
Yeah.
as you turn off from El Toro onto Laguna, right?
So, yeah, what the mayor's talking about is our headquarters, which is just below Annalise Preschool, off Laguna Canyon Road. And that's a place for people to come and learn more about. That's where our native plant nursery is, and we do a lot of events out of there. But Nick's Nature Center is another opportunity, and Aliso and Wood Canyons now has a new visitor center out there. So those are three areas you can kind of learn about the local ecology and the importance of these areas as well. So I forgot to mention that. Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming today.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I have a question. With the way how you have the wildlife, have you ever had like dangerous incidents of the animals attacking the hikers, or?
We haven't heard of many incidents where wild animals have attacked. You hear the incidents where people step on a rattlesnake and get bit, but the rattlesnakes aren't out to follow you and get you. They're there to protect themselves. So just give them space and they're fine. So as long as people are aware of their surroundings, I'm not saying it's totally safe out there. There's inherent dangers in wildland, but that's what kind of makes them, that's why people want to be in that sort of environment. They want to see wildlife, but yeah, just be very careful. Fortunately, this area isn't large enough to support mountain lions for their basically proximity. They need larger areas. Cleveland National Forest is the closest, so they do come in for the day, but they don't stay here. They're in and out. So we have seen mountain lions in the area, but they're coming to Aliso Creek or other areas. But so coyotes, bobcats are major predators in the area right now. So.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Well, thank you so much. It's a wonderful thing that you do and a wonderful organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, now we come to public comments. This is the time and place for members of the public to address the City Council on items not appearing on this agenda. Pursuant to state law, the City Council is unable to take action on such items, but may ask clarifying questions of the speaker, engage in brief discussion, refer items to city staff, and/or schedule items for consideration at a future meeting. So public comments is open, and I have one request to speak from Vicki Johnson.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Vicki Johnson. In April, I asked the City Council to research how Laguna Woods might help protect students from being snatched off the streets. Now, just 2 months later, ICE raids are abducting and arresting our immigrant brothers and sisters all around us. Reports name Lake Forest, Irvine, Aliso Viejo, and El Toro just above 5, and the National Guard and Marines are on the streets. Today, I ask you as City Council members to direct the city to provide resources to educate you, the civic leaders, and all of us residents about immigrant rights, warrants, and how to respond to ICE raids. The city could follow Irvine's example. Just Google Irvine Immigration Resources. Put some links on the city website. The city staff could talk to VMS security about what's going on at the gates because the gate guards don't have any instructions. We've heard that from 5 of them. The city staff could call and get acquainted with organizations like the Orange County Rapid Response Network and the ILRC Resource Centers. The city could print up multilingual Know Your Rights cards. These are pretty popular. And then longer guidelines, like for the Irvine Immigration Resources Responses. It's 4 pages. You could print these up. You could put them at least here in the city hall, the library. You could print them and give them to businesses. And you could offer a bunch of copies to the village. You city council members can issue your own statements on social media. Look at what the Irvine and Paramount council members have posted. You can each talk to the press, to the Globe, to the Laguna Woods television. Please don't be complacent. Look how much has happened in just 2 months. Lastly, I ask for those who voted yes on the May JHAM proclamation to reverse your vote. The mayor showed courage and insight into the problematic his own
next couple of months. As far as the breakdown of cash and investments, the majority of our funds are either in the local agency investment fund, which is the state's pooled money investment account. We have roughly 50% of our funds there. We have a little bit under 44% in interest-bearing certificates of deposit. And then as of May 31st, we had a little under $1 million in cash and cash equivalent accounts, primarily for current obligations and cash flow purposes. In the month of May, we did transfer $800,000 from our savings account or our checking account to our LAIF account. That was in large part because of that influx of property tax monies. We didn't need all of it sitting in a checking account, so we moved some of it into the pooled money account. We had 2 CDs that matured. Each of those had a principal at $245,000. We purchased 4 new CDs, each for $245,000, with interest rates ranging from 3.9% to 4.05%, and with terms ranging from 36 months to 60 months. Both of our trust funds, the Retiree Medical Trust Fund and the Pension Liability Trust Fund, experienced net gains in the month of May. We gained a little over 2,100 in the Retiree Medical Trust and a little over 6,000 in the Pension Liability Trust. With that, I'm happy to take any public comments, and otherwise the recommendation is to receive and file the City Treasurer's report for the month of May 2025.
Okay, thank you. Are there any public comments on that? Vicki?
I just have a question about this local agency investment fund. So you put about half the money into that and half of the other half in investments you direct. So what are the risk protections? This isn't FDIC insured like your CDs. And California's in a big budget deficit right now in other cities, Los Angeles. So what protects the LAIF funds?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to take the other public comment and then I'll respond to both?
Okay, Catherine?
I just really have a simple question. And it has to, you had received had receipts of $2.5 million or $2,558,000, and I'm assuming that might have been property taxes, but you have mentioned it. You said about, and so because that is quite a healthy sum, and it would be typically half of your year's revenue. Yet you're budgeting about $3 million, and $2.5 million times 2 is almost $5 million. So I just wonder what the difference is, if you could explain that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that while Liz is not here, you decide to ask me specific questions. Yes. So, my lucky day indeed. I believe, and Catherine, I can get back to you on the latter comment, but I believe that a portion of that is showing the CD maturity moving back into the checking account.
Okay.
But I can follow up just to confirm that. And then as far as LAIF, I'm gonna have to get back to you, Vicki, on the specifics of the security there. It's managed by the state treasurer, and so it is a separate pooled money investment with the state. We are attempting, though, to diversify that. So previously, we didn't have quite as much money in LAIF. We had money in LAIF and then in OSIP, which was the county investment pool. OSIP wrapped up its voluntary pool participant program. So in the short term, we have everything in LAIF. We are in the process of completing the paperwork to enter a second pooled money investment fund, which will take that larger number that you see in LAIF and split it between two. So we won't be quite as centralized in one investment type. But I can get back to you on the more specific security question as well.
Okay, thank you. That will do it for our city treasurers, unless council has any questions on that or comments. No, okay. So we'll go to our
If we could do
consent
the motion to receive and file that report.
Oh,
Move.
all in favor? Aye. Okay. About the consent calendar, all items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or city staff requests that specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and consideration of action. Members of the public may address the city council on items appearing on the consent calendar, regardless of whether an item is removed for separate discussion and consideration of action. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent calendar?
I move the consent calendar.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Good, excellent. Okay, now we come to public hearings. The status of vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts. So I'm going to open the public hearing and turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you very much. So this is a new annual requirement for all local governments. It's not just cities, it's counties, it's special districts and the like. AB 2561 now requires that at least once a year, and if in those years you're adopting a budget, before that budget adoption occurs, that we hold this public hearing to talk about the status of vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts among city staff. I'll be candid and say that I believe that most of AB 2561 is intended to provide opportunities for labor groups, for bargaining units, labor unions, to directly address the city council on matters pertaining to vacancies, recruitment, and retention. In the city of Laguna Woods, we don't have represented labor. None of our employees are members of a labor union. So this, the way that this public hearing translates to us is, I think, a little bit different than it does for either larger organizations, which might have more vacancies on an ongoing basis, or organizations that have represented labor. But I will just note for the record that for the current fiscal year, which is about to end, right? June 30th is the end of our current fiscal year. For the entirety of this fiscal year until June 6th, we had 0 vacancies. Every position was filled for the entire year. On June 6th, one of our limited part-time receptionists resigned. That position is currently vacant, but we expect to be able to hire to fill that without obstacle. We are planning to post that position either later this week or early next week. We expect to be able to fill it quickly and again without obstacle. As far as one of the things that we're supposed to share with you are perceived obstacles in recruitment and retention, I would first say that, as evidenced by the lack of vacancies, that I don't believe that we have an issue with the retention. With recruitment, and I included some information in the agenda packet. I know we've talked about it before, but the fact that the city participates in both CalPERS and Social Security for certain prospective employees can present an obstacle in the hiring process for a number of reasons, but probably the easiest to think about is in most cities or government agencies, you're participating in one retirement system, typically CalPERS, or like if you're at the county, you're participating in OSERS. It's unusual for most government entities to participate in Social Security. And so if you come to work for Laguna Woods, you have an employee contribution, not just for CalPERS, which you might be more accustomed to, but you have one for Social Security as well that effectively reduces take-home pay. There's obviously a benefit down the line if you vest in both systems from a retirement perspective, but in today's world with the rising cost of everything, take-home pay is obviously a key consideration for hiring. I flagged that as just like, we know that's an obstacle for hiring. There's really nothing to be done about it. Federal law doesn't allow an agency to withdraw from Social Security once they enroll in Social Security. We do have the theoretical ability to withdraw from CalPERS. However, that would come at really significant cost to the city, and it would create its own kind of obstacle, because then we would be a government agency that doesn't offer the typical government retirement program. So it's an obstacle. There's nothing really to be done about it, but this Assembly bill asks us to characterize some of these obstacles, so I have just done that. There is an opportunity during this public hearing for any sort of public testimony on the subject. After you receive that public testimony, I would suggest that you close the public hearing, engage in whatever additional discussion you need, and then provide direction, if you would like, regarding vacancies, recruitment, and retention. There's no requirement for you to provide feedback or input today, but there's an opportunity for you to do so. So with that, I'll turn it back over. It looks like we have at least one member of the public interested in speaking.
Well, come on over. I'm opening the public hearing.
I just have a question. How are you doing on, because you need to add, you're adding in your permit area and inspections, you're adding people. How are you doing on the recruiting? Because I see you've contracted for 6 months, carry over for the people that have been doing the work. Are you making any progress there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Thank you. So we are in the process of insourcing building inspection, building official services, permit counter services, and code enforcement services. We have made job offers to existing building staff. We will have only a single vacancy come July 1. That'll be for one full-time building inspector position, which we will start recruiting for shortly. But we will have both permit technician positions filled, 2 of the 3 building inspector positions filled, and then the building official position filled. Just candidly, as a time issue, we haven't had an opportunity to start to recruit for the code enforcement officer position. So that position is it was on the consent calendar today to extend the contract with the current service provider for another 6 months. We don't think we're going to need the 6 months, but that service provider was willing to extend for 6 months under the same hourly rate that we're paying right now. So we took them up on that offer. So I think we will be substantially fully staffed as of July 1st, and I don't believe we'll have any issue hiring a building inspector in short order. Code enforcement officer might take a little bit longer just because it's less of a near-term priority for us, but I expect that probably by the end of summer, we'll have all of these positions wrapped up and filled.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed, and there's no other questions from council? Okay, then we can go on to the next item.
And we'll just note that that public hearing was closed.
I thought I did.
I thought you did too.
Okay, anyway. We get on to city council business, to fire hazard severity zones. Chris.
Okay. This item, you had the public hearing and you introduced and approved the first reading of the ordinance at your meeting on May 21st. Very quick overview. As we talked about last time, the state fire marshal has released new fire hazard severity zone maps. All cities and counties are required to adopt fire hazard severity zones within 120 days of that map being released that are at least equal to those recommended by the state fire marshal. So in other words, we can't reduce a severity zone, right? If something is a very high fire hazard severity zone, it stays a very high fire hazard severity zone. The only thing the city can do is make these zones more restrictive. So for instance, a high fire hazard severity zone could be made a very high fire hazard severity zone. For the purpose of this ordinance, which is included in your agenda packet, we have not made any changes to the state fire marshal's recommendation. We are merely fulfilling the statutory requirement to adopt the new zones within 120 days. And this recommendation today keeps you on track for hitting that deadline. Our recommendation is to approve the second reading and adopt an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending Chapter 10.13 of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code pertaining to fire hazard severity zones, designating the moderate, high, and very high fire hazard severity zones in its jurisdiction as recommended by the State Fire Marshal pursuant to California Government Code Section 51178, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. There's another opportunity for public comments today, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Okay, public comment is open. Come on.
Ah,
Thank you. I'm Mike Rao. I have a hard time believing that we are at low risk for fire in Laguna Woods. And the reason is that as I drive around and look at how many trees have become desiccated, they really look dead or really almost there and not yet cut down, and many that should be and haven't. I would think that with a firestorm not too far away, but one that carries embers, lighting in the wrong place could really ignite something that would be suddenly very, very dangerous. And so I just want to bring that point to light. I don't know what to do about it. I mean, once a roaring fire gets going and you've got that firestorm going, they're very hard things to deal with. So thank you very much.
Yes, Vicki.
I'm Vicki Johnson. That remark raises in my mind, was Laguna Woods Village examined in detail the characteristics of our area, or is it just private property and they just blended it in with the surroundings?
Part of the village is in a high-risk severity zone. We're not low risk here. Parts of the city are, but most the whole western part is not. So, I mean, we had maps in our last agenda package. Do you want to address
Yeah,
that?
I can make some comments here. So the city, interestingly enough, even though these maps are local, neither the city nor the Orange County Fire Authority had input into the design of the fire hazard severity zones. This was all done at the state level. They intentionally don't look at property-specific impacts. So if you've hardened your home, that doesn't factor into whether or not the hazard exists. They looked at things including fuel loading, slope, fire weather, and areas where they've identified specific wind risk related to wildfire spread. So I think your comments are well taken that once a fire gets started, fires will behave how fires behave. From the state's perspective, using their kind of broad strokes across the entire state, our city ended up with roughly 469 acres in the very high fire hazard severity zone. That is actually a significant increase from the 2012 map, which was the previous one. It was a 112% increase in very high fire hazards. So I view this map as kind of doing a better job of characterizing the hazard. But once the fire gets going, I don't think the intent of these maps is to say this is where the fire is going to start or stop. It's the intent to say this is where the hazard and the ignition exists in greater severity. So we don't have a lot of insight, unfortunately, into how CAL FIRE created these maps. What's true, though, is that we can't do anything other than either accept their maps or make them more stringent. So accepting the maps is what we're doing for the time being. But yes, it would be ideal if the next time these maps are updated, if there was greater local input into the development of them rather than CAL FIRE doing it from Sacramento or wherever they're based. So.
May I continue?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't mean to imply just the city, I meant Laguna Woods as a whole.
Yeah.
And so more attention to specific instances. For example, at Garden Center 2, there is a huge palm tree right adjacent to the office building there. That is a tremendous, that's a Roman candle. Get that thing started and that's going to be a bad fire. And it looks to me like that is a moribund tree. So when there are things like this, more attention to such objects and their removal. Look, everybody's busy. I'm not trying to allocate the workforce. I'm just trying to say there are real serious fire hazards lurking around. Also, just when you drive through, look at the corridor of trees around you that you're driving through. You're not driving across an empty field for the most part. There are many places. And pay attention to those trees and more attention to the ones that should be brought down, maybe should be put into action and brought down. So just a comment. But I'm referring to Laguna Woods as a whole, not just the city.
Yeah.
That's what
So
you
is
meant.
Chris.
That's what you intended. Thank you.
The state fire was the entire area.
Yeah, and sorry, Vicki, just to directly answer your question, the state fire marshal, when they developed those maps, they looked at the entire state, so it didn't matter whether property was public or private or anything. So they applied the same methodology, kind of agnostic to what existed land use-wise on the ground. So, Catherine?
I think there's one thing that we need to understand, and particularly for the village, is that the insurance companies do their own assessment. And that's one of the reasons 2 or 3 years ago that the Third Mutual particularly saw a dramatic increase in the cost of insurance because the insurance people had already recognized that the western part of the community, and particularly of Third Mutual, and if you look at the map, it's basically from Carrizo to the west to the wall. And I did ask the gentleman that was here from, that gentleman, whether they were considering when they're working in that, in the wild area of observing and handling any fire risk and making sure that whatever they're doing there is consistent, which because of the proximity to our community, and he said they are. They do consider that when they're doing all the work in that wild, in that wilderness area. And so I think we just have to kind of understand that, there's always opportunity for fire. I mean, individually in somebody's house, you're going to have a fire. So it's just a case of making sure that we understand and that the housing mutuals and are making sure that the trees themselves are receiving enough water so that they're not dying and that we're taking good care of the slopes within the village. And I know we are. And that's the best we can do at this point. And hopefully we don't have a wildfire in the area to the west. And the probabilities are low, but they're not zero. So we just have this part of living in California. So I know you guys are working together and working with the village on that, and that's the important part. But our insurance people have recognized what it is, and so we're paying for it already in our monthly assessments.
Chief Summers, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
I think City Manager
Okay.
covered
Okay.
it very well based off of all the information we received from the State Fire Marshal.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I was at a meeting this morning with the Gate 11 residents, and Kurt Wyman, Director of Landscaping, did an amazing presentation about the fire hazard zone in reference to Gate 11 and the parts of Third Mutual, and talked about the importance of awareness about the fire zone. And he also laid out some suggestions for people in terms of the type of plants, the type of shrubbery, the location of the plants and stuff near the windows. He did a very, very informative presentation to the Gate 11 residents because they had specific questions. And he outlined about drought-tolerant plants, about trees, about just grass in itself, and the ease in which certain types of fires get more energy, like ambers versus leaves from a tree. So it was a great presentation to the Gate 11 community because they are right there. They're Gate 11 and parts of Gate 9 and 10 are really in that high zone. So it was a great presentation, and I think for the rest of the Third Mutual, and for the council, educating people about awareness of fire. And it's going to take landscape some time to get everything under control, but in the meantime, awareness about fire. And
With
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Great. Okay, now we go to the 25-27 budget and work plan and fiscal year 25-36 capital improvement program.
And how much time have you spent on this?
1 or 2 hours.
So.
Today is our 5th meeting to talk through the next 2-year budget and the next 11-year capital improvement program. We have come a long way on it. We only have a single meeting currently scheduled to deal with the adoption of the budget. Otherwise, we've pretty much got it, I think, to a good place. In previous meetings, we have given you pieces of the budget. So you received chapters 1 through 3 in March, you received chapter 8 in April, and then at the 2 meetings in May, you received chapter 7 and chapter 5. In today's agenda packet, you received drafts of chapters 1 through 8. Each of those drafts, if you received it before, then it's been revised. And if you hadn't received it before, so chapter 4 and chapter 6, those are brand new to you in this agenda packet. So I wanted to just hit on a couple of high-level concepts in the budget. We did include some bullet points in your agenda packet, kind of like an errata sheet of some of the more notable changes that we had made in the budget chapters since you saw them last. Happy to go through any of those, happy to answer any questions as well. But the idea today is that you have drafts of all 8 chapters. Next week at your meeting on the 25th, we would plan to come back to you with the final draft budget, and then with the various resolutions to implement that budget. So next week we would be focusing more on adoption. I would encourage you, if you have anything that you want us to look at or want us to change in advance of next week, today would be the time to talk about it. We shared this information with you before, but I wanted to share it one more time, that both of the next 2 years' budgets are balanced. So we have revenue in excess of operating expenditures in both of those years, roughly $9.3 million in revenue in 25-26 and $8.4 million in expenditures. And then the following year in 26-27, roughly $9.5 million in revenue and roughly like $8.95 million in operating expenditures. Now, for both of those years, we have expenditures in addition to that. Within the general fund, which is what we're talking about right now, there are non-operating expenditures of several $100,000 each year. And then there's also transfers to the capital projects fund for general fund dollars that are used for construction projects in both of those years as well. So within the general fund, we are expecting expenditures of roughly $10.8 million in 25-26, and then that number dropping to about $9.6 million in 26-27. A couple of important notes. Operating expenditures, we have included in that the contributions from the general fund to the senior mobility fund to support the senior mobility program. So we are treating those as operating expenses. And as we've talked about previously, over the course of the next 2 years, we expect to contribute roughly $812,000 for that program. That's in addition to the money that we receive from Measure M2, and then the one-time grant in the amount of $325,000 that we'll be receiving next year for the senior mobility program. The non-operating expenditures, so the $560,000 in 25-26 and the $320,000 in 26-27, that includes in each of those years $250,000 for the new public safety grant program. That's the program that will help to support the implementation of Zone 0 regulations, particularly within Third and Golden Rain Foundation property, and then some monies to encourage the registration and integration of private security cameras with the Orange County Sheriff's Department's Connect Orange County program. And then the big chunk of the transfers to capital projects fund monies in 25-26, 1.6 million of that 1.86 million is related to the downstairs reconfiguration and refurbishment here at City Hall. That is very intentionally a one-time project. You have the money in reserves to do it. And you'll see that in the following year in 26-27, because we don't have that one-time project, the transfers to capital projects drops to a more expected level at $350,000. So my point in this slide is really to share with you that our operating budget is fully balanced. We have revenue in excess of expenditures by several $100,000 each of those years. And then we have some of these strategic, particular one-time or limited time expenditures that we're proposing to fund out of your unassigned general fund balance. Important to note that it's not being funded out of reserves. You have assigned reserves that are in addition to your unassigned general fund balance. There is enough money in your unassigned general fund balance to fund the non-operating expenditures and the capital projects expenditures without tapping into the actual assigned reserves. Fund balances, and this information is included in Chapter 4 in the budget document, but let me orient you to the slide a little bit before I start talking through it. So I've separated it into each of the fiscal years, so 25, 26, and 26, 27. I've provided an opening fund balance and an ending fund balance for each of those years, and I've given you two of those numbers for each years, one for the general fund group, which is in budget speak what we refer to when we talk about the general fund and the capital projects fund. So that easy way to think of it is that's just your general fund. And then all funds is the general fund plus special revenue funds. So that'll be things that are restricted for specific purposes. That could be fuel tax money from the state. That could be Measure M2 money from the county. That's recycling grant funds from the state. A whole host of things that I believe are in, it's either Chapter 6 or 7 is the special revenue funds chapter. So if we look at the general fund in 25-26, you see again an expected drop in fund balance from about 13 million to just under 11.65 million. There's a couple of things that are happening there. One is you have the one-time larger capital expenditures that will be reduced in the following year. And then you also see here that for the last couple of years, the city has been spending down American Rescue Plan Act dollars from the federal government. And so for that period of time, there were expenditures that would have otherwise been captured in the general fund that we were able to spend out of American Rescue Plan Act dollars, out of the federal grants fund. And so with that ARPA money coming to a close, some of those expenses are moving back into the general fund. So some of this is just a kind of correction based on we had one-time monies to spend for the last several years. But I would say the biggest part of this, again, is the 1.6 million for long overdue improvements here at City Hall. So at the end of 25-26, we would end the projected ending fund balance for the general fund is about 11.6 million. That is, if you go down a level, that's the opening fund balance for 26-27. And then by the end of that fiscal year, we're expecting to have about 11.15, 11.16 million in the general fund. Again, operating fund is fully balanced. This is intentional one-time expenditures out of the assigned or unassigned reserves. When you combine all the funds together, we expect to open the next fiscal year with about $14.8 million across all of our special revenue funds and general funds. That dropping to about 14.4 million as of the end of 25-26. Opening the following year with that fund balance, and then ending the next 2-year budget with about 13.87 million in the bank. So you can see that overall, the all funds difference there, if you roll everything together, it's a little less than $1 million in reduction over that time. If we were to strip out all of the one-time expenditures, you would see a net gain in there. The other thing that I'll say, and you've seen this in years past, that we are very cautious with how we budget. And so I believe I would say that it's very likely that revenue will come in over what we've projected and expenditures will come in lower than what we've projected. We don't, as a general rule, typically spend every dollar that is budgeted. And so, we might hit these numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if it looks better at the end of both of those fiscal years. But I wanted to provide you with a kind of conservative, cautious estimate of what we're anticipating over the next 2 years. The bottom line being that we are very financially healthy, and we have monies in our unassigned fund balance to be able to afford the things that are important to the city or that are priorities for the city council. So I think we can feel good about that. Other highlights I want to run through before I open it up to any questions. As has been the case since we incorporated in 1999, there is absolutely no debt service included in our budget. We have no debt obligations. Our pension plans are fully funded according to the most current actuarial valuations. And as we talked about before, there will be an opportunity to consider additional lump sum contributions in the coming 2 years once we get our next 2 actuarial valuations. We also have growing pre-funding trusts for both future pension and retiree medical liabilities. We talked about that a little bit during the city treasurer's report. Both of those in the last month experienced net gains. And we have policies in place that after your current year audit is complete to consider the contribution of additional funds to those pre-funding trusts with the idea that you will eventually be able to use the earnings from those trusts to pay down current year unfunded liabilities. And as I mentioned, in addition to the unassigned fund balance, you do have fully funded reserves in both years for paid leave or compensated absences. This is money that's reserved for if we have an employee who has accumulated time off, they separate from the city and we have to pay them out for that. There's money already set aside to pay for that without impacting the general fund operating budget. We also have a self-insurance reserve that thankfully we haven't had to use, but these are for losses that the city might experience that are not covered by insurance policies. Generally speaking, that would be things like litigation that results from either land use decisions that the city council makes or ordinances that the city council adopts. Our insurance policies are more for workers' compensation, liability, crime, pollution, cybersecurity, those sorts of things. So we do have some money set aside for self-insurance purposes. Thankfully, our loss history has been very low, so hopefully that just stays there and doesn't have to be touched. And then we have a general purposes contingency reserve for economic uncertainties to compensate for unexpected reductions in revenue, unexpected increases in expenditures. Again, we haven't had to tap into that because we have done, I think, a good job of budgeting rationally and conservatively. Those 3 reserve funds, those are calculated based on 50% of your annual general fund operating revenue. And so as your general fund operating revenue increases, so does the amount that we hold aside in reserves. So that's the case for previous years, that's the case for coming years. And then lastly, we talked about this, I think it was in April when we talked about law enforcement costs, but we have built in what I would view as a healthy contingency in the second year of the 2-year budget to accommodate for as yet unknown increases in law enforcement costs. I've mentioned to you previously that the law enforcement costs are principally driven by labor agreements approved by the Orange County Board of Supervisors. They have all of those labor agreements for the Sheriff's Department expiring towards the end of the coming fiscal year. They will be going into negotiations to figure out what those look like for presumably the next couple of years. We will be the beneficiary of the bill generated from that for personnel assigned to our city. And so not knowing what that number is, we did include a number, a contingency in the operating budget to accommodate for what we would expect to see there. That contingency, if not spent, right, if we end up being more conservative than what the Board of Supervisors ends up approving, that money is available for either other operating expenditure purposes, or if unspent at the end of the year, will be rolled back into the unassigned general fund balance. But law enforcement costs and personnel are your 2 biggest costs in the budget. And so I think, again, you can rest assured that we have planned for what that increase looks like over the next 2 years, and we don't expect a challenge in meeting that. I would also add on the law enforcement costs that at the last meeting, Councilmember Moore asked for some information on law enforcement costs as a percentage of general fund expenditures. We did include that in the agenda report, and it does show actually a reduction in the amount of the general fund that's consumed by law enforcement costs over time. Part of that is a result of higher revenue in more recent years and expenditures adjusting to that, but it certainly doesn't show that law enforcement costs are consuming more and more of the budget in a way that would box out other services that you're looking to either continue to provide or provide for the first time. So all of this is to say that I think that the budget that we've presented to you is certainly very cautious, certainly very conservative, but it also, I think, hits on the points that we set out to when we started talking about work plan items and capital projects and things that we wanted to accomplish over the years. It continues those essential services, right? The police services, animal services, building inspection, all of that. It includes the insourcing of building inspection. And so you can see that even with bringing those employees onto the city's payroll, you're still ending the year, both years, with operating revenue in excess of operating expenditures. So I would say from the staff perspective, we feel very good about the budget. I am open to any other comments or questions that you have. That's what I wanted to share today. There's an opportunity for public comments. And then if there's any direction you want to provide to me, you can do that. If not, we will proceed with putting together the resolutions and kind of the formalities of budget adoption for your meeting next week. And then that budget, the next 2-year budget, would take effect July 1 and run through June 30th of 2027. Having said that, I will turn it back to the mayor for public comments.
Thank you very much. Okay, any public comments? Come on down. Up.
Vicki Johnson. Recently at an Irvine City Council meeting, they were also presenting the budgets, and the mayor asked, with these projections of an economic recession, maybe the next 2 or 3 months, it looks like things are great. But what if, and what would be the trigger for we're in a recession or we're in possibly under future duress?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So one of the things that's, I'm not going to say it's unusual, but one of the things that is very good about our mix of revenue is that it is, generally speaking, less volatile because the majority of our revenue comes from property tax. Property tax, as we all know, does not go down. Right? Property tax only goes up. It never ends and it never goes down. And so the majority of our budget is based on property tax. That provides us with a really good safety net when the economy goes up and down. Historically, even when we've had recessions, the city's revenue has been minimally affected. What we've seen is kind of what you would imagine a drop-off in sales tax revenue, but we're not. Even within our sales tax base, most of our sales tax base is on essential goods, right? We don't have car dealerships. We don't have the large luxury items that other cities might have, that when the economy goes south, people stop buying cars, right? They stop going to the mall. They cut back. A lot of our sales tax is generated off of conventional groceries and home improvement goods and things. So we don't see as significant a decline, although we do see a decline in sales tax when the economy slows. The other piece that is somewhat volatile, but again, historically hasn't been significantly volatile, is transient occupancy tax revenue. So that's the hotel tax. Our transient occupancy tax revenue is generated from a single hotel. And so we are, and you'll see this in my transmittal letter next week, that that does create a vulnerability for the city, right? You have a couple $100,000 a year that's generated through a single merchant, and the nature of their business is such that people do tend to travel less when the economy is less high functioning. The one thing that saves us a little bit on that is a significant portion of our hotel's business comes from people traveling to Laguna Beach, but staying outside of Laguna Beach. And there's always a level of travel to Laguna Beach, particularly European travel to Laguna Beach, that is somewhat insulated from the regular economic impacts on TOT. So I would say that in general, we're at low risk for really dire impacts of a recession. But I would also then point to, and I'll go back on the slide here, in each of these years, our operating expenditures are pretty significantly under our operating revenue. So we've got over $900,000 cushion in 25, 26, and I'm eyeballing it here, but over 500,000, 550,000-ish cushion in 26, 27. And so that would allow for revenue to come in pretty significantly less than we expected and still cover our operating expenditures. So this isn't meant to say everything's going to be fine. If there's if there is a recession, we will certainly revisit the budget. But I think we have, from the onset, enough safety valves built in that I would be surprised if we ended up with the really dire draconian cuts that you might see in some other cities where they're spending every dollar that they're bringing in, and a lot of the money that they're bringing in is predicated on luxury goods or things that are more economically vulnerable. So that was a long-winded way to answer your question, but yeah, thank you.
Could I add to that even because the sales of the houses, which affect the property taxes, even if the prices stalled and did not go up, which they've been going up, this is one of the more reasonable areas of the city in which to purchase a dwelling. So it really has a lot of very interesting but very positive. Don't want to be too positive, but obviously when you look at it, and that's why Catherine probably asked about the money from Sherry Friedenrich, the property taxes, if they're up, because I watch the Globe to look and see what percentage, how housing sales go. And we usually have an 8 to 10% turnover. And every turnover means that those taxes went up. And they go up anyway, so it's a greater increase. So it has a very positive effect.
Yeah, the other, not to belabor the point, but the other thing that's kind of worth mentioning based on those comments is we also see a really consistent, continual level of home improvements.
Yes.
Which result in reassessed property values. It's definitely different here. I mean, I think I said this when we talked about the insourcing of building services, that if we were almost any other city, I would be much more hesitant to insource building services, because the conventional wisdom is when the economy is good, people make home improvements, and when the economy is bad, they don't. And if you have them on staff, you have this carrying cost of employees even when you have less work. We have never experienced that here. We have a continual, pretty consistent level of investment being made in homes. And part of that is related to the frequent turnover, right? If you have 8 to 10% turnover, you have new people coming in who are modifying the home to their liking. And then I think it also partly has to do with the age of the housing stock, that the housing stock is predominantly older. And so people are putting more effort into maintaining it and improving it, which is fantastic, right? From a community appearance perspective, quality of life perspective, but also from a stability of work for our city perspective. It means that you've got people investing, which has a positive impact on property taxes, and it also allows us to do things like insource building services and improve that customer service without creating a financial burden for ourselves. So yeah, there's a lot of unique parts of Laguna Woods.
Another dynamic in that too, because when I walk in the morning, at times I have looked to see what percentage of the people have replaced their windows, for example. and I look at a building and I see how many have replaced them. And then I think about it this way, even this is the irony of this situation, because we're in an older community and it's turning over. Even if the building was recently furbished, many of the people who move here are actually moving down. They took money out of a property and they're buying into this community. Even in a building that has had some updating, people tend to go in and do something to the house. So they want the house, if they don't do it themselves, and many don't want to do it themselves, they want to buy it already done, but they want whatever is new right now. And just look at what's going on with it. And I look at, as I say, when I'm walking, I look and keep my eyes on, how the buildings change. And there's a lot of room for improvements, obviously, but it's amazing what happens with the building. And I don't see that turning. I mean, particularly because if we stay in this same position, if we were in a higher end, this were a really highly affluent area, Laguna Niguel, perhaps, you might not have that. Really, it's a very interesting situation, isn't it? It's kind of fascinating. Oh, okay.
I also think when people move to the village, they are looking at their retirement years.
Correct.
They want to spend many, many years, although they keep moving within the village. Because
right,
I've
too.
seen quite a few that moved because of their disability or the
Right.
like for myself, but they pretty much like to stay in the village. And also, as you get older, you spend more time at home. You don't go out a lot in the evening, so you want a comfortable home. And we still, fortunately, keep the value at the affordable level. If they're moving from any parts of California to here, they will have excess cash after they purchase home. So they want to improve. They want to spend majority of their time at home. And all of these things makes it much better for us, And I really feel good about our budget because our revenue estimates are very solid, and our expenditures are real, but still have some rooms. So in any unforeseen change of economy, we can still float without really being hurt. So I feel like we're in a good shape, and thank you very much.
Two other bits of information on this. We have the lowest income of the entire county.
Yeah.
But we also have a very high affluent group because I think Catherine was commenting on it at Chase that the amount of wealth at that bank is rather substantial. I was really surprised at that. It's not a figure that the bank gave out. Actually, I heard it from somebody who lives in another part of another city next door, commented on the amount of money there. So that's another aspect. The dynamics here are very interesting, aren't they?
Yes, well, I think our annual income is not necessarily high, but a lot of
Assets.
people, they
Lot
have
of
assets.
assets.
And they're sitting on.
Good,
yes.
very good point.
So I think that's really noticeable,
Yep,
and that
yep.
makes us feel very stable.
Right.
Yeah, and we are protected.
Right.
In any
Yeah.
emergencies. Yeah.
Annie, do you have anything you'd like to say? No, thank you. Okay, well, I would certainly like to say that a report like this is the envy of almost any other city
I would think
here.
so.
And Catherine, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Finish. I was just going to comment, see, one of the city's in a much better position than Laguna Woods itself, because the monthly assessment has to keep climbing. And, and because their revenue comes on a monthly basis. But I did find when I was at Chase, having a conversation there, because I know we're very low income. But I learned that we're third highest in the county as
Wow.
far as wealth
And assets.
and wealth, overall wealth. And I was surprised. And also that that Chase Bank down there is the busiest in the county for wealth management. They have more people there doing wealth management for people. And to get into that program, you have to have $250,000 over and above, not your house, but wealth, either investments, could be 401ks or whatever, and you're there to manage it and have somebody help you manage it going forward. I think the other thing that's interesting, and it was in the book, was take a look at what the difference from the age of the community.
Yes.
With the censor, when we take a census. In 2010, it was 77. In 2020, it was 74.
And before I could ask what's wrong, he just fell flat on his back.
So I remember coming in the house and seeing his wife on the phone with our dispatch. Dispatch was giving her instructions on CPR.
You're going to lean over and use your body weight to push down hard and fast. Try to go 2 to 2.5 inches deep. Push down this fast. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I got down on my knees and then started the compressions.
It was one of those things where you come in and, you know, there's going to be a lot of chaos within the family, and it was just our job to come in and start looking at the patient.
Pretty much gave every cardiac medication in our box that I could, as well as the monitor, the defibrillation.
It was kind of like this roller coaster of like successes and failures of like, hey, what we're doing is really working. You know, we've got a good heart rhythm, and then we would lose him again.
On our arrival to the hospital, when we passed him over to the ER staff, he did have a heart rate.
We had to put every single medication that we had on him. Having a good crew, having a good partner, and being able to have a lot of hands on the scene, it definitely helped us manage this call in a better way.
Definitely helps having 4 people on a rig. Everyone knows their job. Everyone's willing to get in there and assist with the call. And everything we're taught and trained, we did to our abilities, and it worked out.
To some it may be overwhelming, but to me it was like the cavalry came and I was happy they were there and they could take care of all the needs.
And they didn't seem panicked. They didn't seem, I mean, it was, they all were in control, knew what they were doing. You could tell they were so well trained.
We had dispatch on the line with the wife giving proper instructions.
And I don't think I would have been able to do the compressions as regularly as I did without his help. Yeah, he really calmed me down and kept it steady.
I'm extremely proud of her and what she did. CPR is what saved me in addition to the work that you guys did. It was definitely a life changer. Having the confidence that you guys are here and doing your job is just truly amazing.
I mean, it was an honor to come back and thank all of you gentlemen. I mean, without you, he would have died. And we've been married 55 years, and I wasn't ready to give him up.
So it just means a lot to be able to come back and say thank you, and to say that you're appreciated and it doesn't go unnoticed, and that we just really are so grateful and thankful to you. You guys got there so fast.
It's a well-oiled machine. You guys do a fantastic job.
So every month we get a bulletin from Chief Fennessy, and it contains lots of these videos. But this is one of the programs that he is most proud of, is the return of spontaneous circulation to people. So let me go and start at the beginning here. In May, the ECC, the Emergency Control Center, received 19,347 calls for 14,937 incidents in our service area, for an average of 482 incidents a day, which was a 6.95% increase from May of last year. The dispatched response was in 0.5 minutes, which was 14 seconds faster than the national standard. And the ROSC, the return of spontaneous circulation and pulse, effective circulation following a cardiac arrest, is really important. Nationally, the average rate for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is about 26%. The OCFA exceeds that average with a 2024 ROSC of 32%. Last year alone, that translated to 300 cardiac patients delivered to hospitals with a pulse and circulation by our crews. So these are the things that we get to talk about in our meetings. It's remarkable what they do, and especially for the people here in our city, we have many more calls for this than we do for fire, thank God. But these are the things that really affect us, so we have more of a chance of getting to that hospital with a pulse and circulation. So that's my report. And I get choked up when I think about them. Okay, the Orange County Library Advisory Board, Councilmember Moore.
We did have a meeting, and I think the main thing that I mentioned is the high school graduation, which I plan to attend. The library offers an opportunity for people who did not obtain their high school diploma. So I plan to attend that, and it's in Rossmore. Lots of programs going on.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Lee, the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District.
I don't have a report today. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Well, next week. Okay, the San Joaquin Hills Transportation Corridor Agency, Councilmember Connors is not here, so we'll do that next week. The South Orange County Watershed Management Area.
I'll save that one for next week too.
Okay, and are there any other comments and reports from anyone?
Yeah, so there are two other comments and reports because the city council members attended the Best and Bravest Awards. I would encourage each of you who attended to make some comments on that. And then also the quarterly League of Cities meeting on June 12th that 4 of the 5 of you attended.
Okay, do you happen to have that picture that we took at the Best and Bravest? No? Okay, I should have said something about it earlier. Comments?
Yeah, I will comment on the Best and the Bravest Award. And what really inspired me with these awards was the age range for all of the different recipients of different rewards. I mean, to see young people going into this profession is really heartwarming, but also to see older adults still maintaining some connection with these awards and still being recognized. So it gives me hope, and it was really an honor to attend, so I was really happy to attend.
Councilmember Lee?
Well, it was a very, very pleasant experience for me. There's one employee that who got the award that I remember. I think she was the oldest lady.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She was there forever and ever and ever. And on the way home to the parking lot, I had a chance to chat with her. She was still all charged up,
Yes.
very excited, and things like that really inspires me.
Right.
And thank you so much. And I was so proud.
Ah,
The
there,
fire. Oh yeah. Oh, there. Okay.
there he is with Chief Summers. and
I
all
was
of
so
us.
proud that somebody that I know got the highest award. That was thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes, I guess I'll comment too. I didn't realize it was your, what is that? It's your foundation that actually does all that work to put that together. I happen to know Doug Davert from LAFCO, and I didn't realize that was his responsibility. Wow, that's a lot of work, isn't it? They did a fantastic job on that. While I'm at it, I might as well comment on the League of Cities. We had a fantastic presentation. It's amazing that happened to be our city manager giving a report on the waste hauling. So I gave my comments on both.
I will give.
You have any more on the waste hauling?
On the waste hauling was very interesting. What I found really fascinating was all of the components that have to come together to have an effective program for waste hauling. You got to have such a commitment from the community, even a commitment to where to put the waste hauling bins, and a commitment to just cooperating with the waste haulers. So I found it a very interesting process. And Chris did a great job answering questions, and there were a person from CR&R that was there, and just giving some insight in terms of and even where the waste hauling is taking their waste to for proper disposal. It's a process that I hadn't really thought out that far. So it was really informative for me to hear from the city perspective, from the haulers perspective, and from the county itself.
Yeah, I remember way back when I first got on council, Chris and I went up to Sacramento and to a climate adaptation conference. And there was a scalable, modular biodigester. And I just thought, wow, because we had just done the recycling program. And the idea that, buses and trucks and all kinds of things were coming and fueling off the waste, and it was being turned into mulch. And it was just an amazing, completing the circle. And now here we are. That's what our waste hauler does, as a biodigester. And Chris is now the longest serving city manager in our entire county, and has such a wealth of knowledge about this topic. And it was really, really interesting. He did a great job. We were all very proud. So it was great. And on the fire, the best and bravest, there were older people, but even young people. There were really young people. I don't know how young they were, but they rescued people out of a burning car. It's just amazing how when people need to rise to a challenge, that some do. Some step up and do what it takes in that moment without thinking about it. And when we went to the open house, you could see why every little kid there wants to be a fireman when they grow up. It's wonderful. We should all feel very secure. So, unless there's any other remarks, and I see there's no other remarks, no closed session, we can be in adjournment till Wednesday, June 25th at 2:00. Thank you all for coming. So, we're adjourned.